Hi, everyone. This is Wendy Swanson. I'm the Work-Based Learning Coordinator at Sonoma Valley High School. This is the Environmental Careers panel. So hopefully you all have a little bit of interest in the environment. I'd like to introduce to you our panelists. We have Tony Passantino from Sonoma Ecology Center. He is the Education Program Manager there. We have Christine Byrne from Sonoma County Water Agency. She is the Water and Energy Education Specialist. And we have Alba Estrada Lopez, who is the Education Manager for STRAW, which is Students and Teachers Restoring Watersheds with Point Blue. We also will have, in about 15 minutes, Professor Jose Javier Hernandez Ayala from Sonoma State. He's the director of the Climate Research Center there. And he is finishing a class, so he will be here in about 15 minutes. I think it's so interesting that in this environmental panel, we ended up getting three of you that are all sort of on the education end of environmental careers. So I think it'd be great if, when you're talking about yourselves, is how you ended up on that part of environmental careers. So let's start with, I'd like for you to tell just a little heads up to the students. You are watching live, students, and you can post questions in the chat anytime that you want. And at the very end, we have Nicole Cancella from Pioneer High School who will read through your questions in the Q&A feature and read them to our panelists. So for each of you, I would love for you to tell us what give us a little background about how you got to be where you are, why you chose a career in the environment, what your education was, and really just what inspired you to go down this track. So Christine, you're the first person on my screen to the left, so I will start with you.
Right. So hi, everyone. Really happy to be here today. Like Wendy mentioned, I'm a water and energy education specialist for Sonoma Water. For those of you that don't know, Sonoma Water is the public agency that provides drinking water for 600,000 people, so majority of people in Sonoma County, and then also Northern Marin County. And it really takes a variety of positions to provide clean drinking water so that when we turn on the tap, we can get that fresh water. And so we have positions from water chemists to water mechanics to fisheries biologists, and then people like myself who I'm on the education side of things. So what I get to do is I get to go into classrooms and also do field trips with kindergartners all the way through college age students and basically teach them about water conservation, energy conservation, climate change, and a whole range of different environmental topics. And I guess how I landed in this position where I currently am, I was lucky enough to be one of those kids who grew up really spending time outside and loving spending time outside as well. So I grew up in Sonoma County, graduated from Anley High School, and some of my earliest memories are actually on the Russian River. I remember my family would just put a little inner tube swimsuit on me and just send me up the river. I would float down, I'd run up the river again, float back down. And so I think it's really that love for a place, and specifically those places in Sonoma County that are so beautiful and really around California in general. And so from there, I decided to study conservation resource studies. I attended UC Berkeley, studied there for a number of years. And while I was there, I only thought to be an environmentalist, you had to be a research environmentalist. So my first several jobs doing environmental work was actually doing field research. So, I'd go out into the field to these cool places, collect a whole bunch of data, analyze that data. But I remember one job I had, which was actually in Kansas. I was in Kansas for a summer, and my task was to study climate change. But to study climate change, I had to count blades of grass on the prairie all summer long under the heat of the Kansas sun. And it was really at that point that I realized I love the environment, want to work doing environmental work, but there's got to be another way to do it. And I'm a people person. So I thought, well, how about I take those people person aptitudes that I have and become an educator, become an environmental educator. So that's what I did after college, became an environmental educator, did some awesome jobs in the Santa Cruz Mountains, then became a high school science teacher, taught science in Oakland, San Francisco, Santa Rosa, and then landed my current position. So doing environmental education work for the county of Sonoma, specifically around water issues.
Great, thanks so much. Tony.
I was just about to stuff my mouth with another pistachio, so it's good. First off, it's a weird setting because all we can see is ourselves, but if I'm zoomed into your jumbo screen in your classroom, how's it going? I'm Tony Passantino. I'm the education manager for the Sonoma Ecology Center. I am a Sebastopudlian, similar to Christine. There's a lot of us folks out here. But a big shout out in addition to Sonoma Valley High School. I see we got Miss O'Leary's class, we got the ag class in there. I may have worked with some of you students when you were back in middle or elementary school. We do a lot of programs and field trips out here in Sonoma Valley. We're a 32-year-old nonprofit. We work on what we call the Sonoma Creek watershed. So the vast majority of Sonoma County is Russian River. We've got a little sliver on the back end for us Sonoma Valley folks that we protect the Sonoma Creek watershed. We like the Russian River too, but it's our little geographic territory. What do I have to answer as well? What is the role?
Tell us your background and your career.
Yeah, so I went off to school. I went down to LA, the furthest place I can get to from Sebastopol. I know a lot of Sebastopol people here are probably ready to get out of this town when you graduate too. Love it. I come back to it, but went down and studied geography at UCLA. And reason for that is it's a multidisciplinary subject. We think about geography in high school and it's, state capitals. It's a little bit more than that right now with the current conflict and war in, Ukraine, and knowing about the differences of, the geographic territories of land masses in Europe and Eastern, Asia and all that was really interesting to me, as well as natural resource management. And so geography is an interdisciplinary study of humanitarian and kind of humans, as well as natural resources. And so it weaves together a really interesting storyline. I think we segment into these silos of this is the environment and these are people. And in the world that I want to work in is we as people live in the environment. We are a part of nature. You don't go into nature. We are always a part of it. And so that's one of the aspects that I try and promote in what I do as an educator. A couple of things I give for pointers for high school kids, just with the short amount of time we have. I did AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is essentially a one-year domestic Peace Corps program. Peace Corps is amazing. If you can do it, go for it. It's a 2-year program abroad. Incredible stuff. AmeriCorps is a 1-year service here in the US. It includes things like Teach for America, where you get to give your service into the schools. You can build trails on the Pacific Crest Trail, up and down California, Oregon, and Washington. I did a project with the Keep Tahoe Blue campaign. So you've all seen that stickers in the back of that Subaru. I was a part of that. And we were protecting Lake Tahoe. Got to get out there, live up there for a year, which was incredible, do a year service, kind of put my foot in the door for a career path. So AmeriCorps, highly encourage you all to do. And one other aspect that I really appreciate in my journey was what we call woofing. And woofing is not an app for dog walkers. Woofing is actually an app, or I guess a website. It's an acronym for Worldwide Opportunity on Organic Farms. And so it's essentially a job board of a work exchange where you get to work on organic farms all over the world, New Zealand, Germany, Mexico. I was privileged enough to work in Hawaii, spent 6 months out there and learned my hippie roots that weren't already developed from my life in Sebastopol. And had a great experience from that. I encourage you all to look into the woofing program as an alternative as well. So a lot of things. College is great. You all should do it, but there's a lot of other opportunities like AmeriCorps and WOOF that give you some great skill sets. And then found myself as an educator at the Sonoma Ecology Center back home, which I'm so happy to be as much as I wanted to get away from Sonoma County, we really live in a great place. And so giving back to the community you know and love, bumping into the family and friends that I've grown up with, I just know where else I want to work in. And yeah, looking forward to having more of you young folks out there involved in this profession.
Thanks, Tony. And actually, that's a great segue to the next panel after this one, which will have somebody from AmeriCorps talking in the public service panel. So if anybody is inspired by Tony's words, you can listen in the next session to someone from AmeriCorps. Alba.
Good morning, everybody. I hope I'm not like zoomed out in your classrooms because that's so odd. My head's not that big. Good morning. I work for Point Blue, and within Point Blue, it's a big nonprofit and it has different areas, different science that we do. For example, there's some people who like go to Antarctica and they go look at penguins, but there's other people that work more directly with ranchers and like landowners, and they try to figure out how do we do climate change and carbon sequestration there. And I work for this other area called STRAW, which stands for Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. And it's pretty descriptive of what we do. I would like, if I have to summarize it, I always say like I plant plants and then I teach people about it. And within that, there's like a whole lot of other science to do, right? Like what kind of plants should we be putting in this area depending on the environment? And also like even with teaching, right? Like how do you teach like kindergartners as opposed to like high school people? So it's pretty fun. And I really enjoy that part of my job because it's really versatile. So there's some days where I'll be out in the field and there's some other days that I'll be doing this, which is really fun as well. Or I'll be in the classroom teaching about like different environment and things like that. How did I get here? So I grew up in the Central Coast in the Salinas Valley. If you ever gone down the 101, you probably have seen a bunch of agriculture. I grew up right there. My parents were day laborers for a really long time. And I was on the similar thread as you, Tony. I was like, ooh, what's the school that I got that's furthest away? Because I love my little green field, but also I want to take a little step away. And I went down to UCLA, which is a fun coincidence. And I got my degree in biology because it's like the study of life. And I got to learn about a lot of different parts. And at the same time, I also like minored in things, which basically means you don't take like the full 10 classes. You could take maybe like 5 classes. And I did that in Mexican studies and Spanish because I was really interested in both. And once upon a time, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor because, you know, as a immigrant person, you're like, oh, you're good at science. Okay, that's like obviously the next step. Like, you know, you're not really exposed to a lot of things. And I loved helping people and I loved talking to people. And so it was something that I was excited about. Just the more classes I took, I was like, oh, wow, but there's a whole wide world. I kind of want to learn a little bit more about that. So I was still going on that trajectory. Mind you, like at that time, I was also doing a lot of volunteering. It was like interesting to now reflect on where I was spending my like spare time, if you want to call it that, as a student. I loved working with students. I loved teaching them about science. And when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to take a gap year for several reasons. People have already suggested to do a lot of volunteering, which is awesome. And times have changed so much now, which is incredible. But when I was in college, they didn't do a lot of stipend programs, aka like you have the ability to like get something paid, at least even if it's a little bit. Because I had to work a lot of jobs in order to like attend college, which I'm sure is like the reality for most of the people on this panel as well. So because of that, I wanted to take a gap year because in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do all those science internships that I should do before I go to med school and whatnot. In the meantime, however, I applied to this program called the Roger Erliner Young, or the Ray Diversity Fellow. And Roger Erliner Young is this like incredible woman, and she earned a PhD in zoology. She was the first Black woman to earn a PhD in zoology, which is pretty rad. And they named the whole fellowship after her because this fellowship is meant to have recent undergrads of color in established environmental orgs, aka like they give like people of color who just graduated college a job that's paid, and you have the opportunity to explore a field that you're interested in, but also that you're like able to do, right? Because you're going to have some of that income and support, like community support as well. So I did that at Point Blue for 2 years. The fellowship was 2 years, and I realized I really like it. I really like not being under fluorescent light as many doctors are. And I liked the tangibility of it. There's, of course, I mean, you know, climate change is a global problem, but like if I need to fix a plant, it's just a matter of like digging a better hole or getting some mulch. So I really like how there's some parts of the job that are like really specific and like they're really simple. And I want to answer a fun question. I think there was one that said like, would it be better by Nima if you got a job? Oh no, there was this other one that was cool. Anyways, there was one that was about like, would you rather have a job that's like you get paid less, but you really love it, or like one that you get paid a lot and then but you don't really love it? I feel like I love those questions because I always want to cheat them, and I'd be like, I do the one that pays me a lot, save up all my little coins, and then I just switch over to the one that I probably have now because I really like the job that I have. Alrighty, that's all I got because I know we got other people. I think Dr. Javi Hernandez Ayala is also here.
Yeah, thanks, Alba. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Hernandez Ayala. I hope I'm saying everything right. Good. So I thank you for joining us. And I know you jumped in a little bit late. We've been going around with our panelists and having you talk about, you know, your background, how you got where you are, what interested you in going into environmental work. So take the floor.
Awesome, and thank you for inviting me here. Sorry I was a little late. I just finished my weather and climate class at Sonoma State a little bit early, and students were still like, I have a question. I'm like, I'll cover the question later. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. So my background, so I'm a physical geographer, climatologist. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm actually in Puerto Rico right now because of the pandemic. I had to move my family over here. And I've been working remotely from here, going back and forth between Puerto Rico and Sonoma. At Sonoma State, I've been now for almost 5 years at Sonoma State, working as a assistant professor, which is the first kind of a rank of professor that you get. I'm up for tenure now for associate professor, and I teach a lot of environmental science, weather and climate change courses. My research has mostly focused on extreme weather and its relationship to climate change. So I've done a lot of research on hurricanes, because I was born in Puerto Rico and born in September when hurricanes are the most, kind of frequent and active, and they were always destroying my birthdays. I decided to learn more about them. I've also done a lot of research recently on wildfires in California and the relationship between wildfires and extreme rainfall. Right now, I'm doing some interesting research with students on atmospheric rivers. So this is the first time that we're teaching an atmospheric rivers class at Sonoma State or maybe at the CSU, and we're having a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. And if anyone has any questions regarding, works in academia, I'm here. But for those of you interested in becoming professors, right? You do get to spend a lot of time getting an education, getting your bachelor's, your master's, your PhD, your doctoral degree. But then after doing all of that and getting the job is a very, very satisfying job, and you feel like you're making a big difference, not only in your community, but in the entire world.
I'm going to jump in with another question for you since it's on my list and we're talking to you right now. All right. Tell me what, if a student was particularly interested in going into an environmental field, and we've heard from everyone else that they had different majors, geography, biology, et cetera. What would you recommend? What majors would you recommend? What skills do you think students might want to sort of start beginning to think about on their journey? That's
a good question, because for me, I was interested in all of the physical sciences, but also in the social sciences. Right? So I was like, I'm trying to find like something that I can do physics, but I can also do sociology, right? Or anthropology, or I want to do chemistry, right? So, and I ended up in geography because geography really offered the flexibility to do all of that, right? Geography, and in geography, we have different fields like human geography, which is kind of closer to the social sciences. And then we have physical geography, which is closer to the environmental physical sciences like biology, chemistry, physics, ecology. So I would say that students, explore those interests that you have. And if you're more interested in, in learning more about the relationship between, certain species and their habitats and ecosystems. Maybe you want to try and explore a little bit on biology, ecology. If you're interested in connecting how us humans are affecting, our climate, I would definitely encourage you guys to do environmental science or physical geography. So I want to say that it is okay to not know right now, right? And use those first years or use, when I started college back in 2008 here in Puerto Rico, I started majoring in psychology actually, but then I took my first geography class and I'm like, this is what I want to do because I can kind of bridge and interconnect all of this. And I haven't, this was, I want to say, the best decision that I made because it allowed me to, now I work with people from, from geology, from biology, people in the social sciences, so I have a lot of different colleagues who have shared interests. And I want to say at the end of the day is about what really motivates you, what really makes you wake up, in the morning and do this kind of work.
Great, thanks. I'm going to kind of ask the same question to the rest of the panel. Like, what skills or interests do you think are most valuable for students to have if they want to go into environmental work? And do you think there's things they should do along the way to develop those skills? So feel free, any of you, Christine, Alba, Tony, jump in and comment on that.
Sure, yeah, I can go ahead and start us off. I feel like a lot of people have echoed this, but like try lots of different things. I think recently I looked back at my resume and I was like, dang, I've had like 23 jobs. It's like so many jobs, like from high school all the way to now, and a whole bunch of range of different things. And each one of those jobs, each one of those opportunities really just narrows down how you want to plug into the meaningful work. And I guess I just want to, emphasize that like there are so many different ways to do environmental work. There's not just like being a researcher or being an educator. Really, any career that you were to take up or any opportunity, you can be an environmentalist in that career. Like we need bankers that are doing environmental work, and we need mechanics that are doing environmental work. So I think for me at least, what I've tried to figure out along the way is like, I know that I want to care for the environment and I want to care for our communities. Like that is what drives me and like gets me to wake up every morning. And what I've tried to figure out along the way is based on what skills I have, like what I'm good at and also what I love to do, how can I plug into that? And so, yeah, I guess as you're trying out different opportunities, like think about what is fun for you as well. Because you don't want to be doing a job where you like wake up every day, maybe you're doing environmental work, but it's not actually fun for you. And jobs are going to have fun days and not fun days. But at the end of the day, think about like, what are the type of things that I love to do, the skills I love to do, what is fun for me? And then you can do meaningful work in whatever way that might be.
Tony, Alba, do you want to add anything to that?
Always a staring contest in these panels. One time, Tony. Yes, echo that completely. There's not, that's usually my advice. Like, if you really like writing, awesome. We need people to like do grant writing so we can get that money so we could go plant some plants, among other stuff. If you really like photography or video making or whatever, communication's is a huge section. Like, how do we make people care? Or how do we make people know that they already care, right? And sometimes it's like images. So anything that you're really interested in, there's a way to like further this mission. But also that sounds like so like abstract. You're like, okay, cool. Like I really like writing, but like at the end of the day, what does that mean? You could do a lot of volunteering and like asking around. I feel like one thing that can be like for whatever subject is like be really comfortable with like asking a question and like just talking to people and be like, how are you doing that? Like if you see someone planting, right, you could just go ahead and be like, oh, why are you planting those plants? And who knows, maybe that leads to an internship or so like a volunteering gig. So I feel like the only advice I usually give is like, be okay with asking questions and like embrace how awkward it is, because it is awkward. You don't know them, they don't know you. Now there's math, like another layer of awkwardness. But just like ask a lot of questions because, you never know where that might lead to.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. I'm going to ask another question, which is sort of a loaded question given the world today. But what do you think lies ahead in the environmental field in the next 5 to 10 years? Where are we headed? What are we going to do? What are the big issues?
Climate change. Yeah, we got a foot of sea level rise coming by 2050. We just heard that in the news today. If we were to stop all greenhouse gas emissions today, meaning every single car would go green, every coal mine and factory would stop going across the world, we would still have a 10-year increase in climate change as of today. And so, yeah, we need a lot of people out here, and hopefully many of you folks are keeping that in your mind of, I want to be on the right side of history. And all I can say is, 50 years down the line, whatever the outcome is, I want to be on the side that says, hey, I tried everything I could. I did my heart and my career path were working on this initiative, which is the greatest challenge in human history. And it's like, this is absolutely what I want to dedicate 100% of my life into. I couldn't see any other path. We need all the other paths. We need our doctors, nurses, we need our farmers. It's like Christine said, you don't have to be siloed in environmental science or environmental studies. It's just having that mindset shift. And the young folks are the inspiring ones. I don't want to put the pressure on you all, but I'm just stoked on the way that you all think about the world compared to, when I graduated 15 years ago. It's a whole different mindset. It's a worldly outlook on things. I think a really interesting one here in California that's not going away. There's a great program. I think Humboldt just became a Cal Poly, which is cool. They have an awesome wildfire program and wildfire ecology and living with wildfire and forest management of the California forest. That one, if I went back and did it all over again, I'd be pretty excited about that. We've all been impacted. You all folks, you've dealt with wildfire. It'd be interesting to really dedicate your path now that you have that personal experience on living in harmony with wildfire, which is a natural aspect of our ecology here in California. And there are positives that we can come out of and making a life outside of the negative impacts of wildfires if we can understand it better and manage the lands better. So that's something that I've pushed hard, more recently.
Yeah, great. Professor Hernandez Ayala, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Tony. I think climate change is our biggest environmental issue. And just like Tony said, even if we stop everything, all of our emissions, if we just completely revolutionize our transportation, our energy infrastructure, our planet is still going to be warming up. So we need to also develop strategies, right, to at least slow down, the very worst from happening, right, or prevent the very worst from getting out of our control, right? And this is where restoration comes in, right? Ecosystem restoration, to community preparedness, planning, mitigation is something that we talk about. How can we prepare our communities and make them more resilient so that they can actually live in harmony with wildfires? Like we live in harmony here in the Caribbean with hurricanes, right? And we need to, think about how, environmental sciences are the future right now, because we are trying to solve the biggest problem, right, of our lifetime by using the knowledge that we are generating every day from our research, right, from our exploration of all of this phenomenon. How can we use scientists, engineers, right, people in all different fields, like Christine mentioned, mechanics, right, people in all ventures in life are going to be part of this big mission. And I want to say, at Sonoma State, we're training students just to do that, right? I'm teaching my students, those of you that are interested in technology, right? We have, one of our professors, Dr. Daniel Soto, he focuses on renewable energy technologies. I focus on understanding extreme weather. How can we use our technology today, our modeling, to try and understand how atmospheric rivers are going to be more intense, so that then we can know, or at least be prepared to manage that excess water when it comes, or the no water that comes, right? We're dealing right now with a major drought, right? And is definitely challenging, but we cannot confuse that with, there's nothing that we can do, right? It's like we just need to sit back and wait for it to happen. No, there is a lot that we can do, right? And there's a lot of work in our community. So this is not only for people who are in the physical sciences, right, or computer sciences or engineering. There's a lot of work in the social and humanities that needs to work through the arts. And some of you mentioned photography. I think Alba mentioned photography, and the video, performance arts. That's how we communicate in our society, and all different types of careers, right, can have this focus on the major environmental challenge of our time. And I welcome you guys to explore possibilities at Sonoma State. Reach out via email. Right now I'm not there, but I'll be there April and May, so you guys can reach out and if you want to learn more about what we do. I also run the Climate Research Center at campus, where students are part of the kind of a research team and work on a lot of different issues. But yeah, there's a lot that is concerning, but there is also a lot that we can do and tackle not only the issues of climate change, but also tackle the issues of let's say equity issues, social justice issues, right? So it's not only solving the climate change issue, which is very, very complicated, but also at the same time solving problems that make life more difficult for people that are going to be getting the worst impacts of climate change.
Yeah, thank you. That's really so important. Just a little shout out to a book I'm reading right now, The Ministry for the Future. If anybody's read that, it's very scary and very hopeful all at the same time. And it's a sort of coming together of different cultures and countries to solve the climate crisis. So pretty interesting. So Christine and Alba, would you like to add anything to that?
To be additive, no.
Okay.
There's one question, I think, that Kelly.
I think Nicole's going to jump on those in 1 second. Okay, before we jump to that, I just want each of you, if you had to offer one word of advice, one word to each of our students, what would it be? You can maybe do 2 words if you have to, but. Tony, what's your one word of advice?
I guess YOLO.
YOLO.
Take advantage of your one life, live it up, do what you can, be good to the world, be good to yourself.
Great. Christine, what's your one word?
Get involved. And I guess what I mean by that is climate change is freaky, right? Like, anyone else feel some real fear a lot of the time about climate change? But for me, what I've discovered is the best way to feel better about climate change, the best antidote, is to get involved. Just jump in, join groups, be part of the mission, be part of things. And that is the best way to ward off that fear at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's great. Alba.
Extension to that, just be curious.
Excellent. Dr. Hernandez.
I would say action. We need to act, right? We need to stop talking about what needs to happen, and we need to make it happen, right? In the environmental sciences, in the political, right? Everything in life. We talk a lot about the things that need to be done. We know what needs to be done, but we do a lot of talking, and our leaders do a lot of talking and little action. So I want to see more action.
And that's great. Okay, Nicole, I think I'm going to ask Nicole to jump on and read some of the questions from the chat. This is Nicole Cancilla from Pioneer High School.
Yeah, hi. Great. So this question is for anyone who wants to answer it. What is your experience working for a nonprofit? And can anyone speak to how it is different from working for a for-profit business? I don't know if one of you have experience in this.
I can give a couple comments on that. So there's 3 kind of major fields there. I think with the other one to add is government. So there's public entity, there's nonprofit, and there's for-profit. Oftentimes with the for-profit, it's bottom line of what are our margins, how are we making money, essentially, how are you making someone above you more money? That's my take on it. You can be effective, you can be quick, you can do rapid response with for-profits, quick turnarounds, but maybe a little bit more messy because there's less responsibilities and oversight. A government entity, in my mind, is the opposite of that, where a lot of oversight, want to do the right thing, but a lot of bureaucracy to make sure that it's accountable. And so it can be a really slow and oftentimes outdated with technology and catching up with the current trends. They're not as rapid responding because obviously they want to be transparent. There's a lot of accountability. And so it's kind of slogged down by that for good reasons, but it just can't be mobilized to respond to actions that are necessary with the current times we're in. And a nonprofit works with both the for-profits, these foundations, a lot of big businesses donate to our nonprofit initiatives. They believe in our mission. So basically we're selling, here's what we believe, here's our mission. We want to protect Sonoma Creek watershed. If you support that, send me our way and we'll do it the best we can. We're not as fast as for-profits. We're not as slow as government entities. We're kind of in the hybrid state in between both of those. The last thing I'll add to that is we're also usually the lowest paid of those three different facets of job employment. So you have to deal with that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I can add to that. I would say another difference to that is like a government or a for-profit, they're supposed to continue on, right? Like hopefully they will continue on, the government especially, depending on your feelings of it. But a for-profit, they want to continue to go on. In theory, a nonprofit organization should work itself out of a job. Like they have a mission and they're trying to, I no longer should have to plant plants because all the spaces have been restored, right? In theory. However, I will say there's so many positives to working with a nonprofit. There's like, again, that like directness that Tony was talking on, the tangibility. But each nonprofit, just like every business, is different. And yeah, people have different experiences. This hasn't been my experience with my nonprofit, but it has been other friends and like other nonprofits of like, there's a sense of like, you need to continue to work, even if it's like past your capacity, right? Like you're tired, or it's like, oh, but aren't you about the mission? Like, aren't you like, yeah. So I would say in a nonprofit, especially, it's important to know what your boundaries are, whether it's like mentally, physically, like you can, dedicate your life to this type of mission, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you need to live and you need to have all these different spaces of your life. So I would say those are the major differences. And I would say that's one of the reasons why I stayed on after my fellowship at Point Blue, because I've experienced that where I'm like, okay, it's past 4 or 5, whatever the time may be for the day. I'm going to clock out. Like, I am not going to read emails. I am not going to do anything, because even though like climate change is a global problem and it's urgent, it's not going to be fixed tomorrow. So it's okay. I'm going to go talk to friends. I'm going to go talk to family, etc. So I would say those are things just to like also keep note of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Balance is very important. Yes, Christine.
I'm just going to add one more thing. Y'all did a great job describing the differences between those 3 different sectors. So I work in local government. But I guess what I wanted to say is that we need good people in like all 3 of those sectors. Like we need good people in government, we need good people in nonprofit field, and we need good people in businesses as well. And so I don't think I guess for me, at least, there's not like a hierarchy of like, is one better than the other? It's like, nah, we need just like environmentally focused, socially minded people working at all those different levels in order to solve our problems.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So another question we have is, would you rather own your own business or work for a business? Mima is the one who's asking this one as well. And she kind of says working for a business pays a lot more than owning a business though. So if you guys could respond to that. Thank you.
So I run a little bit of a side business on top of all this. I am a guide, so I lead treks. This summer I'm doing Half Dome, Mount Whitney, and a part of the PCT. I work with other organizations and kind of piggyback off their financial kind of overhead. It's a lot more work, but a limitless freedom. And so I really appreciate having that little side hustle. And I think there's a way you can do that as well. There's a lot of stability in being employed in a greater entity with, just having that sustainable income and not being in charge of having to do your own kind of mercenary work to pick up odd jobs. But, if you got the capacity, you could also continue your side job on top of that. And I love that. It's my summer gig and it's my weekend things, and it's kind of fulfills that extra little passion I have in life.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that?
Running a business is a lot. Like I just did my taxes yesterday. I couldn't imagine doing taxes for a business. Not to say that if you don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, go for it, because, we need creative people with innovation. But contract work, I would say, is not, so like you could get contracted, kind of like Tony was saying, from a different organization isn't unheard of. I do something similar, which is like leadership development, right? So it's still teaching, but it's beyond Point Blue. And that's a little bit easier logistically.
So you have your main job, and then you could do some like contracting out with other businesses, like independent contracting kind of. Yeah. Christine, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess. So what I've done is I like have my government job, it's like stable. I work a 9 to 5, I like know how much money I'm making. It's like pretty solid. And then with my like extra creative energy, kind of like y'all were talking about, having like a side gig, a side hustle, that's how I spend my time, as well as I do just like tons of climate justice organizing outside of my main job. And so I think the idea of like working for someone else provides some security, some financial security. And then with that like extra passion you have for making change, maybe that's like an extra thing on the side that you do.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. So Wendy, I think that's all the time we have for questions.
I think so. Yeah, we're just about to wrap up. I really want to thank you all so much. And I know that we have a lot of students listening who are already interested in working with environmental issues, but hopefully there's even been a few more who have been inspired, and hopefully you've given them some things to think about and things to contemplate for their future, and some great ideas for how to get there. And your 4 shared experiences are so interesting, and it's where we all need to be thinking, and every different walk of life needs to be thinking about environmental issues now. So it's super important. And I really appreciate all of you for being here, and thank you for your time.